I wanted to discuss one last element of Cold Comfort Farm, as it is a term that comes up in your upcoming POE. So let's unpack this idea of futurism as it works in the novel Cold Comfort Farm. Just a reminder of what we've looked at so far in the book is that we've looked at how Cold Comfort Farm works as a parody of the super serious, doom-laden English rural novel, which tended to be highly, melodramatic and over the top, and is something that Stella Gibbons plays around with, makes fun of, and undermines throughout the course of the book. And in that way, the book is kind of looking backwards in time. One of the ways satire or parody works is that it can take something people have a very nostalgic view of, something that happened, something that is from the past, and it can kind of explode that feeling of nostalgia to show us that what we're nostalgic about isn't even true or accurate, and so it ruins the nostalgia for us, which is part of the power that parody has. So it has to kind of look backwards. But the weird thing about this book is that it also tries to work with imagining what the future is going to look like. So the book is actually the book was written in 1932, but when you look at the beginning of the book, there's a little inscription somewhere, and it says that the book is actually set sometime in the near future. So it's not set in 1920 or 1910, as many of those rural novels were. It's actually set somewhere in the 1940s and 1950s. So it's got this kind of speculative element to it. I won't say that it is necessarily science fiction or anything like that, because it doesn't quite work. You can read the book and not even pick up on some of these quote unquote science fictional elements. So it's not the novel's overriding genre. Rather, it seems to be drawing on this idea that was very popular at the time Gibbons was writing, this kind of philosophical viewpoint of the modern world called Futurism. And Futurism was a belief system, or as it says, actually an artistic and social movement that rose up in the 20th century, which was interested in trying to think about the future, or trying to make the future happen in a certain way, or being interested in the intersection between human beings and the technologies that we were creating. So it emphasizes things here, like you see in the article: dynamism, speed, technology, youth, violence, and specifically technological objects, which at the time were, very new, and therefore made people speculate what it is that these things were leading to. So, like the car, the aeroplane, the industrial city, these were new features of human life, and people began to speculate about what that means for human beings. Are we going to integrate with these machines? Are we going to become machines ourselves? What is the future going to look like? So the book is very weird because it's past orientated, but then also has these elements of futurism in it. Futurism was a thing that started in Italy, um, mostly among artists. It ended up being somewhat problematic because a lot of people say futurism also led to fascism. It was part of fascism, where the part of the future was that a nation state like Italy, should be led and run according to certain technological anti-human principles in the name of the betterment of the collective, of the state, of the nation. And that led to some pretty bad things, like the rise of fascism and Mussolini, Hitler, World War II. So futurism is not really something that has maintained much popularity, but I want you to see it as being kind of a look, people trying to imagine what the future is like. We're trying to drag the rest of the world headlong into modernity, like into the modern expression of what a human being is. It was an artistic movement, so it played around with imagining and speculation of the future. Here's some of the artworks that came out of the futurist movements from 1930. Um, kind of abstract, but you can see the lines, the colors are very kind of like harsh and hard and angled and kind of tough. Um, not very human. You don't see any human beings in the picture. Everything's about the machine, about industry, and about using technology to create stuff and take us forward. Here's another one. I think this is a picture of a racing car from 1920, and this is all again that speed, the dynamism, the violence of technology. You don't see a human being there. You just sort of see an abstract representation of a driver, but you can't really tell that it's a human being. And so capture this speed, this the danger of it as well. And this is what futurism kind of produced. This is how they saw the future, was that it's not necessarily safe, but that we are rushing into it, and we just have to go all in. We have to accelerate into whatever's coming next. And their art try to capture that acceleration and that kind of total acceptance of whatever technological advances are coming. And that's kind of creates in the book this very odd dynamic where it's making fun of something from the past, but the book itself is set in this futuristic England. And you have to look a little bit for it in the book, but it is present. And the book is, for one thing, the book is set in a future time relative to when it was written. So this is sort of the 1940s, 1950s. And the effect it creates is kind of strange because, again, the book is so oriented towards making fun of the past, but then it's set in this world that is somewhat recognizable, but also unrecognizable. It's got all these things in it that are elements of kind of unexplained future. I just made a note of some of them on my side that I wanted to mention, and maybe what their purpose is as well. Just a couple would be that air travel in the book is commonplace. There are these things called air taxis, and people use them quite casually. So Flora travels from London to Sussex, where the farm is, by what is called an aero, an AERO, an aero, an air taxi. This sort of technology would not have existed in the world Stellan Gibbons lived in. So it's purely made up, but not that far off how things actually ended up going, right? And I think what it does is it gives you this very playful juxtaposition of, on the one hand, this kind of rural backwardness that the Starkadders are stuck in, with the modern world that Flora comes from. So she's almost, in a sense, traveling into a different time, and she's bringing with her all of her modern ideas about how things should actually work in an attempt to drag the Starkadders out of their backwardness and into the future, which is normally regarded as a good thing, right? Let's go into the future. But as we maybe are discovering in our world, the future isn't all it's cracked up to be. It can be technologies can be very disruptive and destroy ways of life that actually people value. So it's not cut and dry. It's not immediately to be assumed that futurism is a good idea. Another example in the book is this, and this is the most interesting one maybe, is the idea of the TV phone. Characters in the book occasionally refer to television phones. It's like a kind of video calling technology, but basically it's sort of like your iPhone or your smartphone. And it's kind of like a Zoom or FaceTime or WhatsApp calling that they have, that is just a regular part of society. So again, it's not at all mentioned that the Starkadders have this technology, because they don't. They're literally from the past. and Flora is trying to drag them into the future, kicking and screaming in a sense. So what's the purpose of it? I think it fits well with the overall satire. She uses futurism to parody this idealized past that is created in the genre of rural novels, right? But it's idealized and romanticized. It's sentimental. It's not actually true. And if contrasting it against the all the cool technologies of the modern world and what's coming down the pike in the future, means that whether or not these rural people like it, they're going to simply be dragged into the future, whether they like it or not, and they need to be ready. They kind of need a guide, and that guide is Flora, who slowly, over the course of the book, teaches them how to be modern, basically. So the contrast and the inversions, instead of only being a nostalgic kind of satire, Gibbons also plays around with this imagined future in which rural life hasn't yet caught up, but it will. The characters of the Stargatters are all caught up in this kind of cultural and emotional stasis. They're just stuck in an ever-present past, and she has to come in and pull them out. And that's also what modernism is about, right? Is like taking us into the future. Modernism and modernity are the same kind of idea. So the book is inviting audiences to think of the future and to think of what's coming and to understand the world they live in is not going to remain the same. And that's also the point of modernism as a movement. And its big insight is that the world is a changing and is doing it very quickly. And with change comes big upheavals and lots of interruptions to how we have traditionally done things. And with that comes a lot of danger and risk. But also what comes with it is an opportunity to be something we are not. Those are not automatically good things. In the modern world, we tend to look at technology and just assume that because it's technological, it must also be good. But that's not necessarily the case. These pictures and stuff you see from the futuristic artists, this futurism gang, they have a hint of danger and also anti-humanness. Like there's no people in their pictures. Where have the people gone? Where's humanity gone? What happens when we let technology just take us over? What remains of us? That's a question that modernism also poses, and is why it's so interested in, say, you read Virginia Woolf, and it's very interested in the self, but also in the individual. What makes an individual human being special? Is it special? What if we were to lose that specialness? What if it just drained away because we outsourced everything to the machines to think for us, to do our work for us, to remember things on our behalf? It's a scary world in which human beings might be around, but we're not doing anything, So it's not all good. It can also be kind of bad. Last thing, I think the other way you can understand is that the reason she uses it is because she just wants to kind of find any way she can to make fun of things. And the science fictional futuristic elements help her to do that because they throw into a stark contrast just how silly and backward and rural the Stargatters actually are. So that's another way you can think of it too. Hopefully that clarifies things for your POE. I will talk to you again in class. Until then, stay well and chat to you soon.